Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 6 of our special Humanity Rising programming for the 12 days of the Conference of Parties in Glasgow, Scotland. As you know from the news and from various activities here on Humanity Rising, the world has focused its attention on an event in Glasgow that was judged yesterday by Greta Thunberg to be a complete and utter failure. It's an extraordinary moment in human history that we find ourselves in a climate emergency. We find ourselves, as the UN Secretary General has said, in code red for humanity, meaning that escalating and increasingly lethal climate turbulence is now unavoidable. And yet our governments have met in Glasgow on this 26th Conference of the Parties, and in face of the most obvious fact in the world, have done nothing. Our diplomats and our politicians have become masters in mouthing the words of what they know the world wants to hear. But then behind those words, in the protocols and agreements, succeed in allowing themselves to do absolutely nothing and to essentially kick the ball down the road. When we all know that we're at a time when the ball can't be kicked down the road anymore because the gig is up and we have to take immediate, dramatic, regenerative action. And as I've been talking with various people coming in from Glasgow, as you know, we all have over the last 6 days, the reports are that the level of disconnect between the official goings on and what they're calling the blue zone of the governments and what's happening on the streets of Glasgow by citizen activists could not be more stark. And that culminated yesterday in a massive march led by young people and Greta calling what is being done a sham. And I think their words were that this was a northern greenwashing festival. So today and tomorrow, there's going to be massive manifestations on the streets of Glasgow. We may be hearing from various people coming in from Glasgow. We'll also be hearing from a couple that we introduced yesterday, who are in the scorched forests of California, where forest fires have devastated millions of acres of wild land. We'll be possibly hearing from them. But today we want to focus our attention on what we're calling climate colonialism. Over the last 500 years, as the Europeans traversed the globe and conquered the planet, essentially, the people who suffered the most were the indigenous peoples all over the world. And in one of the great ironies of history, it's been the people who were most devastated, the remnant, endured. And that remnant kept the faith and kept alignment with the mother, with Gaia. And it's that remnant in our time, literally in the last 15 or 20 years, that have been coming forth to warn that unless we change our ways, we will face a devastation unprecedented in the annals of humankind. And that day of reckoning that moment of judgment is now. And that's why the world is focused on COP26. And that's why today, everyone, we're going to listen to a number of people representing the indigenous traditions in the hopes that we can glean some wisdom and some illumination about what humanity needs to do at this most critical hour. We're going to hear from a lineage in South America and several lineages in North America. We know that there are many indigenous peoples from all over the world. We've had a number of them on our programs very consistently over the 18 months that Humanity Rising has been broadcasting. But we wanted to just focus on several spokespeople that are present, and through their voices, listen to the indigenous peoples from around the world that I would say in one accord are warning that we need to return to the mother, and that if we can find our way back, we will survive and we will prosper. And if we do not, we invite our doom. It's that kind of starkness that characterizes our moment right now. So it's in that spirit that we want to consecrate this session. We want to start with the Q'ero people, a lineage in the Andes Mountains of Peru. We've heard about them over the last several months as we brought their elders and that tradition into the councils of Humanity Rising. So I want to introduce Ray Christ, who's been an apprentice to Q'ero elders for many, many years. And he will be providing our opening of sacred space. And then we'll be telling us about the history of the Q'ero, the message of the Q'ero. Then we'll be turning to some spokespeople of some of the native tribes in North America, who I'll introduce after Ray is complete. So Ray, welcome to Humanity Rising, and we welcome your opening invocation.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure, it's an honor to be here, speaking to big truths that need to be heard and need to be translated into action. I am honored. This open sacred space in opening our hearts and opening our heart into feeling into what is happening. I invite you to find a comfortable seat with perhaps one hand to your heart in opening sacred direction according to the elders of the Q'ero Nations people. To the winds of the south, Sachamama, great serpent, Hampue, Hampue, Hampue tuku yankai, Hampue tuku Coloriti. I invite you, Apu Coloriti, big mountain glacier Coloriti, to be the witness. I invite you to polarize us into the ancient ways, to awaken us, to awaken our spirits, to become present into what is true and what needs to be done. Be here, Coloriti. Be here, Sachamama. Allow us, Sachamama, great serpent, to shift, to change, to shed our skin and let go of these ways that are bringing us into a place of the end. Allow us to return to understanding Mother Earth as a living being like you do, great serpent, always belly to belly with her. Horpichai! And turning to the west. Kontisuyo. Hampue, Hampue, Hampue. Hampue Wilkatika. Hampue, Tuku Munai. Welcome West, welcome Motorongo, great jaguar. Be here with us, bringing with you the power of the jaguar, walking fearless with a clear mind. Welcoming the great mountain, the holy mountain Wilkatika, that of feminine tears of joy. Wilkatika, may you be a witness to our awakening. May your glaciers return and be restored so we can once again have that balance of being connected to the stars. Be here, Wilkatika. Be here, Jaguar. Hampue. Turning to the north. Hampue Colibri, sweet hummingbird. Hampue Apu Machu Picchu. Be here. Beloved ancestors, whisper to us through the wind, through the Weda, the ways of being, the ways of thriving, the ways of finding connection with the divine and connection to Mother Earth. Be here, witness Colimbri, the return to coming back into the sweetness, into the nectar. Teach us how to fly backwards, to receive the indigenous wisdom, to bring it forward, to dart left and right, to spread it to this new world so we can connect once again with a great wisdom, with a great connection with the Apus, the holy mountains, the stars, to witness once again our planet. Be here, ancestors, awaken us through your wisdom for a new way to bring forth the prophecies of healing of Mother Earth. Horpichai. Turning to the east. Hampue Suyo, Hampue Suyo, Hampue Apu Tibet. Hampue Condor. Teach us, Condor, spiral upward. Allow us to spiral upward and now see the greater picture of what is happening. From high above, allow us to see the sacred valley. Allow us to see the glaciers. Allow us to see the whole globe, Mother Earth. Allow us to awaken to the reality. And from there, high above, may we be inspired. May we be awakened with the divine. May we feel the divine as you always feel it within you, flying wing to wing with the Great One. Be here, Condor. Awaken us. Horpichai. And feeling your feet, or maybe reaching out, down and touching with your hand. Santa Terra Pachamama Dulce Mamita. Gracias. Hampue, 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 Hampue Tukumunai. Thank you, Mother Earth. Thank you, Mother Earth, for your big love. Thank you for being such a sweet mother to all of us. Thank you for giving us all the elements to build a body. Thank you for giving us all the nourishment to sustain our body. Thank you for giving a home for us to return this body to when we leave, to become one with you again. We are gathered here today, Pachamama, Dulce Mamita, to talk about what we can do as humanity to be awakened to the damage, to how we've hurt you, to be awakened to the fact that you're a living being, pulsing with a heartbeat, with veins and rivers, with oceans of emotions, with bones as forests. We are grateful to you, dear sweet mother. We're grateful for your mountains, your deserts, your forests, your rivers, your vegetables, your fruits, your flowers. For every single thing is your gift. Thank you, Mother Earth. Thank you, sweet Pachamama. Gracias. Horpichai. Reaching above to the sun and the moon. Inti taita, mamakia. Hampue, Hampue great Inti. Hampue great Inti Waira. Bring us the wind of change. Thank you, sun, for sending the light so we could see clearly. May we begin to see clearly. Thank you for sending your flames so we could burn these old contracts. Thank you for being here and making life possible. We bow to you, great sun, Inti. We bow to you for the life you give us. In gratefulness we live. Mama Kia, sweet grandmother moon, thank you for being here. Thank you for that beautiful quality of reflecting. May we reflect today as humanity on what we are doing and what we need, what needs to be done to shift this, to change the directions, to leave from that place of war and destruction, and to step into a place of discernment and love and compassion. Horpichai. And I invite you to bring your hands to your heart and bow chin to heart. And I invite you to step into this beautiful place as if we're all together walking in a temple. This temple called Pachamama, Gaia, Mother Earth, Manayi. And I invite you to bow to your heart to also thank yourself first. So to shift in the place of awareness and sweetness within. And if you wish to, wherever you are in the world, culture, if you wish to, and only in you wish to, you can bow to any god or goddess, saints or avatars, power animals. May all that have power of energy be here to help us in awakening and in shifting. Horpichai. With your next inhalation, rise and open your eyes. Welcome all once again. It is such an honor to be here today. I am honored to be representing the Q'ero elders today. Today is Inti Waira, and it's a very big celebration, and it was impossible to get anyone to come down for the mountains to sit in front of a computer. And not only do we not blame them, but essentially they are with us doing the work. They're up in the mountain. This is one of the biggest celebrations of the year, where the glaciers are celebrated. Inti Waira is a national holiday in Peru, as the culture of the Q'eros has really permeated the modern world. Coloriti, being a beautiful, great glacier and another great celebration of winter solstice, is where we really can see the heart of what we celebrate. For me, in this last 16 years of being close to the elders, not only has saved my life, literally, it is also in that aspect has given me a life, has given me a mission and a purpose. So through my years of apprenticeship and initiation, I've been initiated originally as a Pampo Messiah, then as a Alto Messiah, and most recently as a Kerak Akulek, the visionary. And I have been given a nickname, the Bridge. When the elders asked me to start teaching the wisdom of the Q'ero Nation's people, I was honored, I was humbled, and I was, to be honest, terrified. And they said, how can I'm a white person, I am what's brought all this destruction. How can I do it? And Don Francisco, my beloved teacher and brother and father and ally in this work, said, this is your time to change what happened. This is exactly your responsibility, our responsibility, the Northern Globe responsibility. And I said, but still, how can I teach it? And he said to me back then, and I didn't understand it for a few days, I was just perplexed. He said, teach it in English. And through talking with him, the essence is teach it in a way that the Northern Globe people can hear, in a language that they will understand, that they will comprehend. So who are the Q'eros? The Q'eros are the earth keepers. The Q'eros are the ones, the indigenous people of the Andes, that hold as the most sacred the feminine energy. And first of all, Pachamama. The Q'eros, who are still alive today, and the culture is absolutely thriving and absolutely intact, are essentially the ones that come after the Incas. They're the predecessors of the Incas. They are the ancestors. Their ancestors, the Incas, gave them the way and gave them all the ways to understand reality of our life on the planet. The Incas gave us the way, gave them, the Q'eros, the way to nurture the planet, to make a planet that is sustainable, that is a loving mother that can still hold us. So the Q'eros are the direct descendants of the Incas. And when the Incas, when the Pacos, the shamans of the healers of the Incas, saw the conquistadors coming in 1532 in the Sacred Valley, they saw fire coming. And they, as men and women who study nature, who learn from the planet of what it means to be an other species, another mammal of the planet, they having studied the animal movement when they'd see floods or fires coming, they noticed that all the animals took to higher land. They would go higher and higher up into the mountains. So as they witnessed the conquistadors coming in, they knew that this was fire. It's almost in some way that they knew that they were the ones bringing that fire, which eventually spread so much as a fire that became the Industrial Revolution, that became the global warming. And as they followed the instructions of the animals, the way of the serpent moving further up, all the way to the condor to fly up at the tip tops of the mountains of the Andes, they established 12 villages, the Q'ero Nation villages, from 16 to 18,000 feet, and lived there from the 1500s, and only started coming down from the mountains in the 60s. The Q'eros had a mission. The Q'eros appointed themselves to take upon themselves the mission of protecting the understanding of what we are here for. And we are here to be earth keepers. They protected the knowledge, they protected the language. So the Quechua, this ancient language, this beautiful language and very difficult language, different than ours, so different with a lot of clicks and clacks and sounds, is a pure language that is connected, inspired, connected, and is built around honoring Mother Earth, honoring the feminine, honoring the animals, and honoring magic. The connection of magic that we have. The consciousness, the awareness that everything is magic. This language has not been tinted by what came along, which was exactly what took place in Europe and in the Western world, the Dark Ages, along with the Spanish Inquisition, which is one of the main movements of colonialism to move into the southern globe to take. Right? With the Dark Ages, with a lack of the ability to see, with weak men who take over and bring in the darkness by persecuting three main things. First of all, the feminine. Second of all, the animals. And third of all, persecuting magic. So we're witness to a history. We are the ones that inherit a language and a psychology of lack of respect to the feminine, lack of understanding of how much we can learn from our fellow mammals and other species that are here to share this planet with equal rights. And even more so, in this Dark Ages, we are the ones that inherit the lack of magic. I am honored beyond words today to be here with Brother Phil Lane, as I feel we both are assigned and become a part of the prophecy of the Q'ero Nation's people, a prophecy that spread through the South Americas up to Central America and all the way up to the Aztecs, and is now flourishing, is now happening, a prophecy that is now fulfilled, and we are a part of that energy. We are motivated because that energy is within us and around us. I am motivated because I'm instructed by my Q'ero elders to do so. And that prophecy says that the day that will come that the Earth, the planet, will be in the brink of destruction, what will bring back the healing, what will bring back the medicine, is the condor flying with the eagle. Bring back the medicine of the South Americas and the medicine of the North Americans, the indigenous wisdom, as ways of sustainable and living and cultivating and being, as ways of thinking and acting. I am honored to be here today and share this with you, as it's again, as I said, it's saved my life in so many ways, not only because I was dealing with several health issues that I was so much helped by the work of the shamans and changed my health to keep me alive and keep me healthy. But also the biggest part that made me healthy and allowed me to heal and is what we need to share so the planet can heal, and that is a way of being. What the Keros gave me is an understanding of the world. Because as I grew up as a Greek American in the heart of the Western world, and as I grew up and in a language and in two cultures that lacked the respect, the honoring of the feminine, the understanding and closeness to the animals, and of course, by all means, the magic, I found myself in dis-ease, as many of us do. So the medicine is here. And for each and every one of us, there is a walkabout we need to do. We need to go out there and find our medicine. The first moment that I asked Don Francisco, and I was on my knees saying, Don Francisco, I'm losing my life and I want you to help me. He looked down at me and he said, my beloved sweet brother, I can't help you. You need to help yourself. I said, but you're a shaman. He said, I can tell you this. I can train you how to become a shaman and you can heal yourself. And my heart sank back then because I still felt, as I lived in the lack of the beauty and nourishment of the feminine, as I lived in the lack of a jaguar inside me, in the lack that I do have magic, I felt isolated and unable, and that's how we feel many times in the West, looking at what's happening, feeling that it's happening outside of us. And I am blessed and I am honored, and I will still come down to my knees and thank Don Francisco and Don Sebastian, Juana, Dona Bernardina, the Keros for their ways, as I did not only heal, but I was essentially downloaded a language which I'm still struggling to learn, but these meanings. He allowed me to awaken, and this is the awakening we all need to have, that each and every one of us are powerful. Each and every one of us, we can shift into honoring the feminine, and this is the time of all times to realize that, yes, our mothers, our physical, natural mothers that gave birth to us are our mothers, but before that and after that, our great mother is the planet. She is the nourishment. She gives us the elements. Carbon, magnesium, silicon. This is built of actual molecules that are taken from the planet. They're not from somewhere else. We don't just manifest out of thin air. Air is just a part of it. Air is those 5 elements that we receive from her. And not only that, she's such an amazing mother that she says, here, I'll make most of the fruits and most of the vegetables to be the size of your hand. How's that? So you can hold your apple, your orange, your pears, your fruits and vegetables. And here I make the colors for you so you can see and your heart can sing. So Francisco gave me that just by saying you need to become the shaman. And I have 16 years in being an apprentice, and I will always be an apprentice. I've learned that it's about assuming responsibility. As we got scared in the dark ages, we got scared literally and persecuted for 300, 400 years, 500 years. The persecution continued. It is only now we're kind of cracking it open in the 60s saying, wait, we need to have a feminist revolution. Right? Wait, in the 70s, 80s, there must be some animal rights that save them. And then the new age, with maybe perhaps Carl Jung amongst others, cracking this linear and so inhibited way of being from the West, bringing perhaps that new age of maybe there is magic, and maybe we could start thinking about the world differently. The Keros, Francisco, Sebastian, Bernardina, one of the most important things that they shared with me is that I lost my direction because I didn't have that compass. right? And as I opened sacred space, you heard that compass. Winds of the south, the great mountains, the apus, because the great mountains, the apus called, right? There's montañas that are just mountains, but when we talk about apus, we're talking about sacred ones, gods and goddesses mountains. Coloriti, the great glacier. And Sachamama bring that. The animal power, the power of the serpent tells us that we can change who we are and we can change now to change what's happening. He gave me the compass to understand that if I look towards the west, I will see Mount Machu Picchu and the spirit of jaguar. To the north, to see Wilcatica. Wilcatica is the mountain that's called the tears of the feminine, the tears of happiness of the feminine. And to the east, even now, they've recognized Tibet, the place where the condors rise and fly. So I started getting this map, this compass, and I will bring it home to allow Brother Phil to share and others to say that this compass that we receive, along with the prophecy that this is the time that the condor should fly with the eagle, to combine the wisdom and the gems of the indigenous wisdom so we can awaken our consciousness, so we can connect the north and the south, the thinking way and the feeling way, so we can be open as whole beings and not the beings that we became in the West, that were only in this space of linear thinking. I'll finish by saying that the ways of understanding the glaciers and the cosmology of the Incas that the Queros give us is, they said, we live in these three layers, right? We have the beautiful globe, the Veracocha, which is the night sky globe of all the stars. And the stars are sending their blessings, and the first that receive their blessings are the snow-capped mountains, the glaciers. They receive the blessings of life, and the glaciers, at the bottom of each glacier, way deep, a mile deep ice, compressed with information from the cosmos, is trickling water and feeding Urubamba, the sacred valley, the sacred river in the sacred valley. Feeding that, trickling that water of sacred life, and that life through Urubamba gives life to all in the sacred valley of the planet, to the animals, to the crops, to the humans. So may we connect with the glaciers. May we save our glaciers. May we save our connection to life itself. Thank you so much, Jim, for making this happen and for bringing this together, for being a part of this moment of history of changing and shifting back.
Thank you, Ray, so much. And greetings to all of our friends in the Carol people, the elders who've been gracing us here at Humanity Rising for this very important celebration in which they're engaged. And we look forward to your course, actually, that you and Nina are going to be providing with the elders in a few weeks' time. And we'll have Ray back for a discussion. But before we turn to some of the indigenous voices of North America, Georg, if you could promote Basha, Alexander, and Jim Conroy. They came in as panelists for some, as attendees for some reason, need to be promoted to be panelists. They're the tree whisperers that we had on yesterday. And they have traveled at their own expense out from the East Coast of the United States, the West Coast, to visit the areas that have been devastated by the fires. Like, you know, tree whisperers and other people who resonate with the animal kingdom, Jim and Basha have an amazing rapport with the trees. They wanted to come in and just share what it's been like being in some of the devastated areas of Northern California. So Basha, Jim, we welcome you and want to hear your report from the front lines there. You're on mute.
Here we go.
There
Okay,
we go.
great.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's really an honor, and we're so grateful to Jim Garrison and Humanity Rising for this opportunity to give us an on-site report during the COP conference. We're in the Dixie Fire area of Northern California. Just a few words. In the scope of this conference, trees have been seen as a solution for taking carbon out of the atmosphere. And as climate extremes become more extreme, trees as living beings are unable to stay healthy, and unhealthy trees burn hotter. Fires that should be regenerative for the forests, such as those here in the Western USA, turn out to kill or badly damage the very trees that people are counting on to sequester carbon. So Dr. Jim's and my commitment is to holistically heal trees and ecosystems. Yesterday, we spent a second day in the Dixie Fire area. It's a massive fire, and it was only just declared contained about 2 weeks ago. We were there to find out what the surviving trees need in order to restore their inner functionality. And then we were there to heal them from the inside out. We have developed a new kind of energy healing. Our approach is to connect, communicate, collaborate, and co-create with those trees and ecosystems using bioenergy overlap and interactions in consciousness. And we do that with the intelligence of trees and other nature beings. So here's Dr. Jim to tell you about his passion for trees and the path to healing that he and the intelligence in the burned trees collaborated on in this really hard-hit area of Greenville, California, which was part of the Dixie Fire. So here's Dr. Jim now.
Okay, I'm Jim Conroy, and so what I'm about to show you is the path to healing for these trees that came out of our collaboration with those trees in that Greenville area. And what the path to healing is the sequence of internal functions that the trees need to take in order to return back to a growth pattern, their internal functionality to return back to a growth pattern again. Look, those trees, many of those trees are bare, and I'll show you some pictures in a few minutes. And the idea is to get them back to grow, those that can. Okay, some of them are so crispy burned that they can't. Okay, but we take the ones that can come back and we work with those, and they don't have leaves on them, they don't have needles on them, but they still have the potential to live. Okay, trees are very, very resilient, and they will try to live. And I'm going to show you what the path to healing is for these trees.
Hang on, I'm going to share the screen. There, share.
Okay, now prior to the fire, the trees' tubes were blocked. Okay, usually in the roots to trunk area and in the trunk area primarily. So the trees weren't able to take up any moisture in the soil. So the tissues inside of the trees were very, very low moisture inside of those tissues and not healthy. These were not healthy trees. Okay, it's a little bit different. Any of you were on yesterday, I gave a path to healing for the trees yesterday. This is somewhat different because these trees had less moisture inside. They were much less healthy, okay, on the inside to begin with before the fire came along. Again, there was plenty of water in the soil. It wasn't a drought issue. It was that the trees just couldn't take up the water. Therefore, with low moisture inside of the trees, naturally, the trees burned hotter. So what's the path to healing? The first thing is we had to connect. It's a little bit of I'll try to explain this as best I can with you. It's a little bit about connecting up the whole ecosystem, getting that whole, all the trees and plants of the ecosystem connected, connecting up with the elements, the water. There's water around there. Okay, there's plenty of water around there. All right, there's a big lake in that area. There's water. There's water up in the mountains. There's water around there. So isn't that? But it's a matter of getting all of that connected up. And what happens in a dimensional space, everything gets all connected back up again. All right. So it gives the trees access to the element of water within their systems. Okay. Then that moves from a dimensional to physical to back to a dimensional space again. Mostly that dimensional physical is what we're trying to do. So the first thing you had to do is get water into the tissues of the tree. Then, okay, the trees have stored food in the roots. Okay, naturally, needles are burned, leaves are burned. Okay, so they have stored foods in the roots. Well, they can break down that food, and out of that food, when they break it down, it's a complex carbohydrate. You break it down to simple sugars. Well, in that breakdown to simple sugars, you get an energy release. Okay, what's that energy release do? Well, that energy release increases circulation of fluids. That's why we needed to get fluids in the tree first. Okay, get some water in the trees first. Because remember I said, prior to the fire, they were all blocked up. That's why they burn so much. Okay, so we need to get fluids in there. And the energy and that energy release that drives that circulation of fluids and now the foods. Okay, so we can start to get that moving around inside of the tree. Okay. After that, up in the upper right-hand corner, I'm that now. After that, the increased circulation also drives the food and fluid to the living tissues in the plant. Okay, gets it. Whatever living tissues are out into that tree, gets the food and fluid out to those tissues. And what can happen is some of the tissues can differentiate into new buds. That's what we're trying to get to happen. Let me give you an example of this. This was in the Thomas fire a few years ago. Look down in the lower right-hand corner. What happens is we're getting food and fluid into those tissues, and then the bark splits and you get a nice shoot coming up out of there. Okay, you see that in that lower right-hand corner. And then you can see the progression here across early in 218, a little bit later in 218, and then again in 219, what happened to that tree. That's what we're trying to help work with these particular trees in this Dixie fire. Okay, those that can survive. Okay. Now I'm on number 5 here. Once they get those tissues differentiate into new buds, then the new buds can grow into needles and leaves. That will make more food, photosynthesis naturally from the sun, working with the sun, they can make more food for the plant. Then what happens is we get into this continuous loop that begins. And this is the path to healing. Okay, so we get some more buds out of that differentiated tissue. Those buds grow, so we get more growth. We get more food for the plant, okay, for the tree, more circulation. You hydrate and feed the tissues. The cells differentiate in the tree, just like I showed you in the picture. You get more buds coming out, and then it goes through this continuous loop, okay, and more growth. It starts all over again. What happens then? Number 7 there, the trees flourish, their goals are attained, and it leads to the forest goals being attained. That's what we're trying to do, get those trees back to shift them back from a pattern of either decline or they're just sitting there in shock to back to a growth pattern again. That's what we want to do. It's working with the trees. I'm absolutely working with the consciousness of those trees. Okay. And a little bit in this case, I have to tell you, this is a picture inside of Greenville, and you can see those trees in the background there. And a little bit of it was this time, I don't always have to do this, but these trees were so hurt and in such shock. I have to kind of give them a little pep talk. That's the best way I can describe it to you. I give them the path to healing, but I have to give them a little pep talk. Come on, guys, you can do this, okay? Because what will happen is they will just sit there and not grow and then go into a decline cycle, and then they die. It's a little like, okay, why can't trees heal themselves? Well, they can. But when they're sick, they get stuck or confused. They can't manage their inner resource. The sequence of systems are not in sync. They can't grow, and then they go into a decline cycle. All right, that's what happens. Well, what I do is I kind of talk to them a little bit, work it out with them. Let me give you an example. This was a tree I did in Connecticut. It was planted, transplanted the year before, and it went into transplant shock. And here it is in May 2nd of the next year, 2018, and it wasn't budding out. Okay, so I had given the tree a path to healing. I worked with it. The tree says, well, look, if I use this path to healing and I don't succeed, then I die. But I had to go work with the tree, but say, look, if you don't, you really got to give it a shot. You got to give this path to healing a try, because once you do, you have a good opportunity to put out leaves. And if you don't do that, the chances are that you'll just go into a decline cycle and then gradually fade. Okay. And that's what I have to do. I kind of got to work with them a little bit, especially when they're in strong shock. And they do come out of this, working with the spirit of the trees, working with the energy of the trees, helping them do that. It's a very, very close relationship with the trees. I got to tell you, I call it a pep talk, but let me tell you, it's a very close relationship with the trees, because they know what they want to do. They're in shock. They're not sure what, and even when I give them the path to healing, they're not sure whether that's going to work or not. And they'd say, well, maybe I'd rather sit here and do nothing and hope for the best, you know. And it's kind of a little like people, okay. But I work with them and tell them, give this a shot. You can see what happened about 3 days later on this tree. And the next slide over, the guy sent me a photo in the deodorant, sent me a photo where the trees had begun to bud out. Okay, and it was kind of beautiful to see. All right, again, this is a shot of those trees in Greenville. You know, they have an opportunity to live, and that's what we do. Help them get that internal functionality back connected up inside. Give them that opportunity to live, and so that they can flourish. And in this case, had to give them a little extra pep talk so that they could, you know, really go ahead and do it. Bring their spirit back in, pull them out of that shock phase that they were in, so then that they could begin to start this cycle, that path to healing that I gave you, and begin to flourish again. Our whole purpose is to get them started on this in the fall of this year. That's why we're doing this work this year. Get them all started on this fall. The weather's still nice. They can still get it started, at least get them out of the shock phase so that they're moving forward. And then next year we'll come back and we have to work with them some more, but that's no problem. That's the easy part. The hard part is get them out of the shock phase, get them started now, right after the fire. And then they can go on and start their whole cycle and begin to grow again. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to bring back Masha. Go ahead.
Whoops. Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah. So obviously, Dr. Jim is a very gifted healer, but we teach people to do simple versions of this kind of healing, and anyone can do it. It's very easy. We teach mindful methods that include whispers and include visualizations. So one of our websites is partnerwithnature.org, and Dr. Jim's website is thetreewhisperer.com. And the important thing that we want to finish with is to say that ecological damage can be healed using consciousness. Yes, the practical things have to be done, but in combination, if people will simply use these methods, use their consciousness to work with the trees as collaborators, as partners in co-creation, then we really can get a handle on this climate change and heal the ecological damage. So thanks very much.
Asha, Jim, thank you so much. And want to invite Ray or Phil or Natayo to join here in a moment, but just a quick question. What I'm taking from your account is, trees are a lot like people. There's different personalities and different kind of moods. And I'm just wondering, as you kind of go from tree to tree there in the Dixie Fire, do you find some trees are in shock and they just are depressed and they don't want to activate? Are there other trees that are in the same situation but have a more, I don't want to use the word personality because that may not apply, but I'm sure you find differentiations in the willingness of trees to engage with you or not. Is that just anthropocentric?
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, that's exactly what happens. They all want to, it's not, engaging with me is not the problem. It's whether they're so much in shock that they can actually take up the treatment. That's really what the problem is. Okay. Yeah. If they're in so much shock, they can't take up. And that's what we found around Greenville yesterday. Okay. Yesterday, the day before, we were up around Chester, a little bit further more north, about 30 miles north. And those weren't as much in shock. They were hurt, they were burned, and all those things, but they weren't as much in shock. But Greenville was really in shock, and really had to work with those trees. And of course, you have to understand as I said, that the tissues were drier there, so they burned hotter. So you can understand why even the trees that are alive, they are more in shock because it was a hotter fire. Okay, so they kind of they feel that. Okay, they do feel that. So so it's in shock, and to some extent, I'm like you. I don't like to call it a personality, but to some extent, they do have a personality. Okay, and it's all driven by what they want and how they want to live and what they want to do. And things like that. Okay. And that's what it's all about. But it's mostly, in this case, it's mostly that they're just more in shock.
Gotcha. Ray, Phil, Natayo, any comments you want to make before we move on?
I want to make sure that I give space to Brother Phil. Anyone else? I will say, since I'm not hearing anyone, first of all, I want to say thank you, Basha, and thank you, Dr. Jim. What you do is shamanism applied. You're a shaman. You both are shamans.
Exactly.
Since the shaman is the person that's aware of consciousness in life within all things, that the divine permeates every leaf of every tree, every bark, every trunk. And we too are built the same way. And it is beautiful that you're coming to healing, that you're recognizing their personalities. It is a greater consciousness awareness that we need. We need you now more than ever, not only to save the forests, which are our lungs and our connection to life, but also to expand humanity's awareness, because it is the ignorance we live in, that a tree is separate, or it's only a thing that can make furniture with or burn. So,
exactly.
Exactly. And what we want to get across is that anyone and everyone can connect with nature, can communicate, can then collaborate with that life, ask questions, receive communications, and then co-create. People can still have what they want. But if they do it in co-creation with nature and collaboration, then nature gets to have a say and sometimes has a better idea. And then we can, in partnership, create a livable planet. So thank you for acknowledging us as shamans, but everybody and anyone can do what we do.
Yeah, we find this, trees and plants, the co-creation piece is the collaboration and co-creation piece is a very big thing, because it's possible to work with them. If we ask them what they want, we can get what we want. They can get what they want, and they might show us a different way to get what we want. Okay. And still they get what they want. Okay. And that's when it's really key. And I've had that happen, where they show exactly a little bit different way than the way I thought it should be. They'll say, well, why don't we try this? And then that's good for us and it's good for you. And we both go forward together. And that's what this is all about. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
Yes. Natalia,
I
or no, Phil, go ahead, Phil, then Natalia.
Yes. At the very heart of the symbols of our human family, the most prevalent, and children naturally draw them as they emerge into greater and greater consciousness, is the circle and the tree. Every sacred tradition upon Mother Earth has a sacred tree. And so I want to just reflect on this from a broader sense, that the healing of our tree relatives is a healing of the sacredness of who we are as human beings, as sovereignties, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. And Toja, my dear Toja, my dear niece, Natalia, excuse me for getting in there, please. Your thoughts.
Yeah, I can just add on to that and say, that our tree relatives, are so sacred, and we are so alike. And as I just am always reminded, as they dig down into Mother Earth, they also reach up to Father Sky and connect us so completely. And so partnering with them, having a partnership, having a relationship with them, as I was hearing being explained, this beautiful relationship, kindredness found with these tree whispers, I think is just so beautiful. And if we all are able to encompass that relationship and togetherness and oneness with our tree relatives, we'll be able to heal not only ourselves, but Mother Earth as we move forward.
Thank you. Very true.
Thank you.
Exactly what you're saying. Very, very true. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Basha.
Thank you.
We're
Hear
going to
from you
head.
maybe tomorrow or over the subsequent days as you
Yes.
travel around California. It's so heartwarming to have your presence with us.
Thanks. We're going to head out now. We're going to go to look at the drought situation around Lake Oroville. And then following that, we're going to head to the Caldor fire, which is another big fire in California. So stay tuned. We'll be back.
We'll be back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well,
Bye-bye.
Travel safe.
Thank you. Yep.
Travel safe.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Yeah, it's always so good, as you said, Phil, the tree of life is at the heart of almost every spiritual tradition all over the world. There's something about trees that center human beings and connect us with the larger ecosystem in a way that almost no other species actually does. And it may be because, as they breathe out oxygen, we're breathing in. So the symbiosis between humans and trees takes place with each breath we take. I mean, that's a unbelievable thought, everyone, that every breath we take, we're connected with the trees and the plants. It's just extraordinary, the intricacy of the miracle of life. So thank you for bringing that in. So I want to now more formally introduce Phil and Natalia, who you've seen before on Humanity Rising. Phil Lane is a hereditary chief. He's a member of the Dakota and Chickasaw nations. Natalia is a member of the Blackfeet and Salish nations of North America. And we've invited them in today to help us consecrate this global dialogue as we synchronized with what's happening in Glasgow. And what they're going to present is some of the background of their feelings, as Ray did, but then focus our attention on an emerging treaty for humanity to embrace as we traverse this very critical moment of Code Red. So first, I'll turn it over to you, Phil, and then Natalia, and then Ray. We'll circle in as appropriate as the discussion unfolds.
Great. Well, Mitakiapi, my very beloved relatives, the human family, is so wonderful this day, because a long circle in my life has come together. And Ray, it was so wonderful to hear of your Quiero relatives. This is sitting at the Island of the Sun on July 9th, 1971. Right to my, let's see, get my head out of the way. I'm there at the bottom there with the hat on, I see. On my right side is Melitone Gallardo. You'll see the poncho he's wearing is very unique. It's fashioned after the sun. He was given a vision where the sun came to him and said, "You're my son." And it was the Quiero relatives who escaped into the mountains who kept the holy prophecy of the reunion, the reunion of the condor and the eagle, which has been expanded now to conclude the Quetzal for Central America, but that's where we heard. Now, from the north, as a young man, I was mentored in our own prophecy of the white buffalo, the slaying of the white buffalo, and the Hopi prophecies, and Black Elk's prophecies, and Quetzalcoatl prophecies, the Peacemaker's prophecies, Handsome Lake's prophecies, Sweet Medicine's prophecies, many prophecies. That was, something that was very deep to my heart and goes back in my lineage. And so when the door opened to go down to Bolivia, when I saw the pictures of those relatives still living and most all speaking their own language, so I learned little things like Amana Koshanki, what's your name? Waleklia. And they have that way to say Waleklia, good. You just saw it. Difficult, but incredible people. And so we gathered here at this sacred place where Mako Kapak was born of the sun, and he there with his beloved wife with a golden staff walked across the water. It was instructed that every night to put the staff into the ground, and whichever way it leaned, to follow that path. And it would take them to where the Inca Empire would be established. And when they arrived there, it would sink into the ground. And that's where they came to Cusco. And of course, then the holy place was the Island of the Sun, where Mako Kapak was born, and his beloved wife. Island of the Moon, and then right off as you on the Bolivian side, there is an incredible holy place of the royal court of the Incas. And so this prophecy, we had prayers, and it was all about this. When he talks about in his prayer, and by the way, to see this is the foundation of this international treaty to protect and restore Mother Earth. When you see the way he prayed, as our ancient relatives to the south prayed, to the four directions, to Father Sky, to Mother Earth, to the south. It's the same way across the Americas that our indigenous peoples recognize all the beloved gifts of our Creator. Whether it's in Mexico, whether it's in Panama, whether it's in Bolivia, whether it's in Ecuador, whether it's in Guatemala, we all have the same basic foundation spiritually, which is the foundation of the union of the condor and eagle that existed over 500 years ago. When I was a university professor, the estimates were about 100 million indigenous people were living here prior, as you know, Ray, prior to the predestined arrival of our relatives from Europe and other places. Because the world's round. We're naturally curious as human beings. So our coming together, that's how we can have a prophecy. If we weren't going to come together, how could we prophesy what was going to happen? This was meant to be, this gathering right here. And so from that, now by the way, the estimates are 108 million. People lived here in relative peace and harmony. Relative peace and harmony. Yes, there was conflicts, but nothing compared to what our human family was suffering other places in the world. We lived here, and because of it, we were able to domesticate 80% of all the food being eaten today on Mother Earth. We could go down to 75% even. It was from here. The discovery of the gold and silver that we had taken and fashioned into art in our trying to describe the beauty of the spiritual worlds in which we lived became the actual foundation, as well as all the food that was taken here, for the first time to have more than a barter system, to have currency. And you could go on and on and on and on. At the time that our relatives arrived here from Europe, there's no question about it. And history will reveal year by year as we move forward. This was in the Americas the most advanced spiritual civilization upon Mother Earth at that time. At that time. And what we see, though, coming that needed to be understood was this great spiritual dimension. And by the way, it's not that there wasn't conflict. I'm just saying relative what was going on, where hundreds of thousands of men were put together, killing each other all over, millions being massacred, but relative peace and harmony. And so we see this struggle going on between the spiritual and physical powers of Mother Earth. And now we're seeing, without question, in the fulfillment of this prophecy, as the old paradigm collapses and breaks down, we're breaking through. And all the human beings who are awakening to the reality of the oneness of humankind, the prior unity of oneness of humankind. So I want to thank you, Ray, because these are the brothers, Melton Gallardo, Andres Hachicoyo, Simon Javier, these and many thousands of others that I met that stretched down into the Amazon, across the whole Andes. This prophecy was kept by the Quiero all those years. It's never been forgotten in the North or the South that this great wintertime would end and a great spiritual wintertime would arise. And this is that day. So, you know, I'm kind of getting carried away.
Horpichai.
But when you shared that, it goes right here, right there, this place. So thank you. Would you please pass on to those elders my love and respect and honor. And I have a feeling they may even know, I've heard of Andres Hachicoyo, Melton Gallardo, because they were right there and they were deeply in communication. In 2009, the Statlium Nation called for the International Indigenous Leadership Gathering to come together to protect the sacred. And at that time, we began with our good brother from Greenpeace, and who helped found Greenpeace and others, and to collaborate on how to protect the sacred. So we wanted to understand, on one hand, the scientific understanding of what we understood spiritually about what was happening. And then we realized we needed to have a treaty among ourselves as indigenous people across the Americas. And that's what the work has really been since 1970 70 has been this connection, bringing together in every way possible our indigenous peoples and understanding this prophecy that we've been talking about. And so we begin this process of collaboration across the Americas on the treaty to protect and restore Mother Earth. This included going to Rio +20, meeting with all the indigenous people, relatives there. It included the Indigenous Summit of the Americas held in 2015, September 2015, where all the simultaneous Summit of the Americas, where all the 44 premiers and presidents of the Americas came together for the first time in 40 some years. That Cuba was added, was allowed to come. So we had our meeting in which we fully agreed unanimously to this treaty. And you can go any place across the Americas and find these same guiding principles we've been discussing and so forth, but you'll find agreement to these preamble and articles that we're going to share. And we just ask you to kind of go along as we go along. And this applies directly to the colonial climate, colonialism, what we're framing it here. The thing is that I think this is where Tojad Natayo can attest firsthand how this understanding of how we treat our Mother Earth, how we treat our mothers, how we treat women is directly connected to how we're abusing women upon this Mother Earth and children, is directly related to our relationship and understanding our relationship with Mother Earth. So we're going to begin here. And I ask you just 1 second here. I'm going to do my very best here here we go. I think I'm doing this. Okay. Now, can you see this? Can you see this okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I'm going to, all this, everything was discussed and consulted about. So it's as our indigenous sharing sometimes has how do I say it? Sometimes we're not short and sweet. We're a little bit longer in depth and more sweet. That's what the way. Preamble. We, the members of the human family, speak as one, guided by the sacred teaching and spiritual tradition of the four directions that uplift, guide, protect, warn, inspire, and challenge the entire human family to live in ways that sustain and enhance human lives and the lives of those who dwell on Mother Earth. We hereby dedicate our lives and energies to healing and developing ourselves, the web of relationships that make our world and the way we live with Mother Earth. The spiritual foundation of the indigenous worldview is the ancient understanding of the prior unity and oneness of all life. Therefore, all members of the human family are part of the sacred circle of life, and the hurt of one is a hurt of all, and the healing of one is the healing of all. Since all members of the human family are part of the sacred circle of life, we are all indigenous peoples of Mother Earth. Therefore, every human being is responsible for the well-being of one another and all living things on Mother Earth. Whether or not the nation states, multinational corporations, or international development agencies that surround us are willing or able to participate with us at this time, our indigenous peoples and the allies of the human family are moving dynamically forward in rebuilding and reunifying the Americas and beyond. Our actions and visions, guided by the natural laws and guiding principles inherent in our indigenous worldview and legal order, are based on an internal and spiritually enduring foundation. We have the ancient prophecies and the clear vision of a future of social justice and collective prosperity with the Americas and beyond that we are in the process of manifesting. This new global civilization is unfolding as promised by the ancient ones, the Ancient of Days, fully honors the natural laws and rights of Mother Earth and the unity and diversity of our human family. This new spiritual springtime foretold by our elders is now unfolding globally as surely as the sun rises every morning.
We have always had a strong, enduring, and unbreakable spiritual foundation of cultural values and guiding principles that have empowered us to survive and arise with higher strength and wisdom than ever, despite a long and bitter spiritual wintertime. Even though we experience the utmost human cruelty, violence, injustice, abuse, and physical and cultural genocide during this spiritual winter, we have never surrendered our inherent sovereignty. Despite these long-suffered challenges throughout the Americas and around Mother Earth, our indigenous peoples are reawakening to their spiritual and cultural identities and are healing our sacred relationships between ourselves, Mother Earth, and all members of the human family.
Together, our indigenous peoples and allies of our human family have the cultural, spiritual, scientific, technological, social, environmental, economic, and agricultural capacities and wisdom needed to co-create and rebuild our families, tribes, and nations stronger and more unified than ever before.
Our peoples of Mother Earth have the growing collective social and economical capital coupled with vast natural resources to bring our highest dreams and visions to reality. With growing collective strength, we dedicate ourselves to protecting and restoring our beloved Mother as the sacred heritage of all generations yet to come. Furthermore, it is clear that these collective resources will empower us to become a primary spiritual and economic force, and not only in the Americas, but also throughout Mother Earth. We are destined to play an ever-increasing role as global leaders in wisely mandated and sustainable and harmonious ways for developing Mother Earth's gifts and resources. We will ensure that when the development of the natural resources of Mother Earth is not sustainable, no matter what the profit, they will not be developed. Our sacred places and the healthful life of our beloved Mother Earth are not for sale or exploitation for any price.
We, the indigenous peoples of the Eagle of the North, have the material resources to support the development of the collective resources of our indigenous relatives of the Quetzal and Condor of the South as they choose. The Quetzal and Condor of the South equally have critical resources shared with the Eagle of the North. We fully realize that our greatest strength is our spiritual and cultural unity.
Through utilizing emerging digital communications and green technologies in harmony with our vast collective social, economic, cultural, and spiritual capacities, we will manifest a future with social, environmental, and economic justice for all members of the human family and our beloved Mother Earth.
The primary challenge that stands before us as indigenous people and as a human family in rebuilding the Americas beyond is disunity. This disunity has been caused by all forms of colonialism, injustice, and genocide as a direct result of the three papal bulls during the period of 1452 to 1493 and the resulting doctrine of discovery, which, by the way, led to the enslavement, to the taking of lands, to the massacres, the genocide, culturally and spiritually and physically, of everybody who was not at that time considered a Christian. Everybody. In China, it was justified. It became the doctrine of discoveries. I just wanted to just share, this goes way beyond what we consider indigenous people. Way beyond that. Way beyond that. And is, excuse me, and is the direct result of the three papal bulls, 1449, 1452 to 1493, and the resulting doctrine of discovery. This ongoing colonization with its injustice and genocide has resulted in unresolved intergenerational trauma, internalized oppression, and other deepening global suffering inequalities. We're sharing this not just here, around the world. We see unresolved intergenerational trauma, internalized oppression, other deepening global suffering and inequities caused by these actions. We're fully committed to recognizing, addressing, healing, balancing, and eliminating by every peaceful and legal means possible the extreme destructive impacts of disunity. As we move courageously and wisely forward in ever greater love, compassion, justice, and unity, we're reconnecting to our firm and eternal spiritual and cultural foundations for healing, reconciliation, and collective action for protecting and restoring the sacred everywhere on Mother Earth. The full realization of our spiritual and cultural foundation for prayerful, wise, unprecedented, and unified action assures that our ultimate victory will gracefully unfold at the right time and place as foretold by our ancient ones. With the full understanding of these unshakable spiritual and cultural foundations, we fully dedicate ourselves and our resources to realizing these unprecedented and unified actions to stop runaway climate change. And this is us gathered together in Rio +20. Dear brother Marcos Terena, holding up and proclaiming to our relatives that this, we read it there before the sacred fire, as we did in Panama, as we did throughout the Americas, and as we did at COP21. We took it, and that's where we concluded it, with indigenous people from around the world and other scientists and so forth in the Chateau Miamont outside of Paris. And we'll begin now with this reading of the International Treaty to Protect and Restore Mother Earth.
We, the members of the human family, commit to protecting and restoring the sacred. We will remind ourselves and our human family through our sacred prayers, songs, ceremonies, and our ancient prophecies that Mother Earth is our holy provider of life. Restoring the sacred includes preserving and protecting sacred sites worldwide and returning holy heirloom objects taken from their rightful owners. We will return to these sacred sites and objects for their original culture and spiritual purposes.
Article 2. We, the members of the human family, commit to supporting the global emergence of the 7th generation as promised by fostering youth participation, leadership, and wisdom in all decision-making processes impacting all life on Mother Earth.
Article 3. We, the members of the human family, commit to reducing consumption and waste. These reductions must start in the prosperous nations among the wealthy and comfortable to restore the values of simplicity, respect, and humility. Our human family can live much happier and more fulfilling lives with less consumption and without wasting any of Mother Earth's body and energy.
Article 4. We, the members of the human family, commit to protecting women's reproductive rights and to stabilizing the human population. We've grown past Mother Earth's capacity and our human numbers cannot keep growing. Our ancient relatives knew their communities had to fit their habitat. We practice natural patterns of creation that result in extended families in balance with the natural world. Today, over 1 billion and more of our human family are hungry daily, and 10 million, that was 4 years ago, of these relatives starve to death every year, more today. For the population of our human family is to be stable. For the population of our human family to be stable, it is essential to ensure that women everywhere have reproductive rights and health. Whenever women have rights over the reproduction and where contraception is freely available, the birth rate naturally declines. Universal education, social justice, and ecological justice allow communities to limit their population growth. And as we go here, Natayo, will comment on, as someone who has directly suffered these things among so many other among Mother Earth, of our beloved dimension of the female dimension of this beautiful world we live in. Please continue.
Article 5. We, the members of the human family, commit to transitioning to ecologically sustainable and renewable energy sources and to the zero waste. We will take every peaceful action possible to reduce, mitigate, and eliminate fossil fuel emissions, coal, oil, and gas, and to build the renewable zero emission infrastructure for solar, wind, and hydropower, where it is acceptable and approved through a process of free, prior, and informed consent. Conservation and zero waste will be components of any genuine energy transition, using power modestly and carefully to minimize consumption and eliminate any non-conforming resource extraction projects like the Alberta tar sands. We call for nation states everywhere on Mother Earth to use all possible means to support the transition to solar technology and other proven renewable energy sources. And we call for the nation states to increase carbon taxes and eliminate subsidies to the petroleum industry, and to use these funds to subsidize renewable energy research and installation.
I want to insert here that in 2020, the fossil fuel subsidies were $5.9 trillion. $5.9 trillion fossil fuel subsidies. And whatever has been said at Glasgow, the estimate of fossil fuel subsidies in 2025 is $6.34 billion, $6.34 billion, whatever, $6.34 trillion. Kind of getting confused there. Can you imagine? They're going to increase it by another 3 trillion. Whoa, that's the insanity. That's it. You know what can you do? You can cry or laugh. I choose to laugh and say, whoa. Anyway, we, the members of the human family, commit to restoring and protecting the health and vitality of our planetary ecosystem and ecosystem services by restoring and protecting the biodiversity of our ecosystems on land, water, and air, and by reversing the decline of forests, coral reefs, wetlands, and other productive ecosystems. We commit to replanting, restoring, and protecting the wild forests to provide natural species diversity to grow again and to supply human communities with materials and renewable energy solutions for modest lives connected to productive ecosystems. To achieve this, we require a paradigm shift in our economic systems, a change from unsustainable growth and extraction to the preservation of real wealth, our natural ecosystems. Rather than monetize nature, we must do the opposite and naturalize the economy.
Article 7. We, the members of the human family, commit to permitting only organic and traditional farming by ending the industrial farming methods that have destroyed soils, spread toxins, and harmed our planetary ecosystems. For indigenous peoples, organic agriculture is conventional agriculture. Through our farming methods, we also aim to protect and restore the biodiversity in our planetary ecosystems, with special emphasis on the protection of organic seeds from GMO manipulation and any other forms of genetic manipulation.
I just want to say, insert here, that's why when we gathered to formalize this treaty, April 26th, Mother Earth Day, 2016, there in New York City, the same time they were celebrating the Paris Climate Accord, the elders said, as you listen to these details, they said, they think they can change this world in this 1.5 degrees or centigrade, what do they call that? They think they can do that, and all this is causing this like that? They couldn't believe it. Anyway, just had to put that in there. We, the members of the human family, commit to building a robust zero-emission infrastructure for public transportation by eliminating the overuse of fossil fuel vehicles and restoring efficient public transportation systems, including light rail, zero-emission trains, and trolleys. We will rebuild our communities so people can access their needs by walking and bicycling and so forth.
Article 9, we, the members of the human family, commit to waging peace with the understanding that war is the highest consumer of oil and energy, the most significant contributor to ecological destruction, and the most destructive force among the human family. War benefits only the powerful, the wealthy, and the weapons industry. We will make peace a global priority, refuse to fund war machines, refuse to participate in war making, and stop glorifying war. We call the nation states to eliminate the weapons industry that lives off of the misery of victims among our relatives. Through the full realization of the spiritual awareness of the oneness of human family, the elimination of all forms of prejudice, the elimination of anything that causes a human being or society to feel superior and entitled to oppress another, world peace will be realized.
We, the members of the human family, are committed to restoring and promoting and protecting the rights of indigenous peoples. Industrial economies have consistently pushed indigenous communities from their productive land. By restoring the rights of all indigenous communities, indeed of all members of the human family, we know how to live in harmony with the natural world. We take an essential step forward towards healing our world and Mother Earth. These indigenous rights include the full legal implementation of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, with particular emphasis on the principle of free, prior, and informed consent.
Article 11, we, the members of the human family, commit to cleaning up and redeveloping toxic waste sites. We call for all nation states and multinational corporations responsible for generating dangerous waste, including nuclear, petroleum, chemical, agricultural, and any other poisonous waste, to immediately develop and implement a global plan to eliminate those toxins from all ecosystems, air, land, and water.
And that 2020, I know we're very optimistic, but we felt that's how urgent it is. It's how urgent this is. This is something we need to take into our hands, and we need to set the things that we're going to do. We, the members of the human family, commit to implementing universal gender equality by realizing the full equality of women and men is a prerequisite to peace. And by the way, as I shared, the treatment of women is no different than treatment of Mother Earth, and also climate change. The denial of such balance is an injustice against half the world's population and promotes harmful attitudes and habits among males. From the family into the workplace, into political life, in international relations, and we can go and see how it does directly how we treat our Mother Earth. Ultimately, any gender discrimination, including gender violence, leads to a negative relationship with Mother Earth. There are no grounds, moral, practical, or biological, by which this can be justified. Only when women and men have a full partnership in all fields of human endeavor will we be able to create the moral and psychological climate to realize international peace.
Article 13, we, the members of the human family, commit to facilitating decision-making and leadership that remains beneficial for 7 generations into the future, a policy known by indigenous people as 7-generation decision-making. In the Inca Dakota traditions, the 13th teepee pole is the women's pole, around which the hide or canvas is tightly wrapped. After erecting the first 12 poles, the 13th pole is put into place, and the skin of the teepee is unwrapped around the others, covering all. Without this pole, of course, there is no shelter. Scientific evidence shows that the toxic pollution of industrial culture is poisoning the wombs of womankind, infecting our future generations, causing disease, diabetes, congenital disabilities, cancers, and chemical violence. These toxins are breaking down the 13th pole, harming our women and all women, endangering unborn children so that there may not be the seventh generation, making decisions to generate money rather than maintaining the health of all members of our human family is the opposite of seventh generation decision making.
Article 14. We, the members of the human family, commit to establishing and maintaining bioregional marine sanctuaries throughout Mother Earth as soon as possible. Bioregional marine sanctuary are named areas of earth, water, and air where natural animal populations are protected, restored to more than 50% of historic levels as soon as possible. And the water quality and forest biomass levels are preserved and restored to very high concentrations. Bioregional marine sanctuary borders correspond to natural features such as watershed topography, vegetation types, oceanic, continental shelves and margins, including all rivers, creeks, lakes, ponds, and estuaries, and aquifers. I'm really pleased we've already remapped most all of the Americas and well as other areas into bioregions. So people can see how the indigenous world mind saw the area of bioregions and how they're related, how the Salish Sea is related directly up the Fraser River, and how come all those tribes and nations have such a similar culture. And so it is, we have to understand the bioregion to understand how we can heal Mother Earth. Without understanding the bioregion, instead of these borders, like for instance here in the colonial borders, every single border of all 36 nation states across the Americas divides indigenous peoples and tribes and nations. Every single border, because they do not respect how we were organized using with ecosystems. That's what they don't understand. That's how we understand, that's the way the natural world is. Please.
Article 15. We, the members of the human family, commit to eliminating the exploitation of our animal relatives. Despite animal agriculture being the world's leading emitter of methane, the role of animal agriculture in climate change has been largely ignored during climate conferences. Furthermore, the increased demand for raising animals for human consumption is leading to the destruction of the rainforests and rural land that many of our brothers and sisters call home, causing human rights abuses, poverty, and violence. We will hold the factory, farming industry, and the governments who shelter them with laws accountable for these tragedies. We will also play our part in protecting Mother Earth from further destruction.
We, the members of the human family, commit to holding governments and corporations responsible for making genuine progress to solve the growing challenge of climate change. Historically, after decades, literally decades of climate conferences, COP, now 26 passed, governments and corporations have accomplished little to address the ever-increasing global problem of climate change and have instead subsidized the petroleum energy that intensifies it. And we shared that earlier, the immense trillions that are going to subsidize this. While we will hold governments and corporations responsible for making genuine progress, we will not rely on them to restore the harmony and balance of life. The majority of the work to protect and restore the sacredness of life remains with each and every one of us. We call all members of our human family, including all levels of non-indigenous, indigenous governments, citizen organizations, businesses, labor unions, non-governmental organizations, and third parties to recognize, support, and uphold this international treaty to protect and restore Mother Earth. We invite you to signify your support by signing the addendum to this international treaty. And it was such a beautiful ceremony on that beautiful day. The United Nations was packed. Everybody was celebrating the Paris Climate Change Accord. Of course, we wish them well. But like our elders said, how in the world can you solve all these issues in a little tiny space like this? It was kind of funny. It's kind of pitiful about it. But You know, the Haudenosaunee came down with their canoes from the north on the river, big river there, the Hudson River came down there. And we were at the Brooklyn Navy Yards, kind of a very humble place with our canoes, indigenous people from across the Americas. We also had relatives from Indonesia. We sat there and we signed, and we had a sacred prayer. We had a pipe ceremony. We signed and prayed with that treaty. Then we got in canoes and we went out from this kind of this break from Brooklyn and went out right on the Hudson River, right straight to the United Nations. And of course, we got fairly close, and then they brought two big police boats. I guess they thought we were going to invade them. We did. So we, at that point, we took the sacred pipe that we'd prepared. In fact, it was a very sacred pipe of one of our key warriors, Tashunka Wiko. That was offered then directly, that's crazy horse, directly to the United Nations. Directly, we sent that prayer directly. That smoke went out. We came back. Because I can say this, without this kind of comprehensive understanding, there will be no stopping this climate change. I believe the indigenous people of the Americas who spent 7 years in deep consultation have a very important thing for consideration. Now, again, there's many treaties, but I think this is something more we need to take a look at and discuss, and how we bring our resources together. Whether it's this or something else, it has to be a holistic, comprehensive process. Now, you, Toja, have suffered directly this, and we may, so please, I've had my little thing in here, please share. And then of course, Ray, you started us out. Of course, we got to get Jim in there, but you started us out. You've heard how these things came together. I'm so interesting to hear that. So please, Doja.
Thank you, Uncle Phil. Okinixcoac. Hello, my relatives. My name is Natayo Weaselhead. My Blackfoot name is Niteki Stipinyak, which is one spot woman. As Jim said, I'm a descendant of the Blackfoot and Salish tribes here in Montana. And my ancestors and relatives came from the Kenai Territory, which is in southern Canada, and the Pekuni Territory in northern Montana. And I'm joining you all today from Missoula, Montana, which is the original Salish territory. And I wanted to share with you today my own experience in life as one of the stolen children from indigenous communities, and how colonization has affected me personally and my family. When I was born, I was named Selena Weaselhead, and I was taken out of my native family and community as a 6-month-old infant. And I was adopted into a white family, a white Mormon family. And the first act of assimilation was changing my name from Selena Weaselhead to Julie Geldrich. My adoptive father was a well-respected sheriff in the community, and my adoptive mother was a homemaker. And we led a very normal life. We went to church every Sunday. I grew up on a farm. So I got to learn how to work very hard, had lots of animal relatives surrounding me. My favorite spot was on the very top branches of a willow tree that I got to look across the fields. My best friend was my wild Mustang, Dusty. And when I received Dusty as a child, I wanted to save his spirit from being broken. I didn't like how they called that being trained to ride is broken. And so I kept his spirit wild, and in return, he did the same for me. He taught me how to stay close with my ancestors, and he taught me how to stay fierce in a storm. I grew up on the Flathead Indian Reservation and struggled with being Native and assimilated into white culture. I was one of the very few Native kids who attended a predominantly white school. And I was the only Native that I knew at that time who lived with a white family. I wasn't allowed to go to powwows in case I ran into my biological family. I learned how to dance ballet instead of how to dance jingle dance. At church, I was taught that I was a descendant of evil people. And at school, some of the kids would call Indians savages, or they would call me a half-breed. At home, I remember sitting in silence and confusion as I listened to the racism and the conversation around the dinner table. I grew to have a deep sense of shame associated with my self-identity. I only heard terrible things about my Weaselhead family, that they were mean and terrible people, that they were drunks who didn't want me or didn't love me, that they were liars and lazy, thieves or manipulative. And I was reminded often throughout my life about how grateful I should feel for the life that my adoptive parents gave me. At 8 years old, I was sexually abused, and I went to my parents for protection and for help. And suddenly it was me that they were calling the liar. And over the years, their love for me grew cold and disapproving. I was forced into early marriage after a teenage pregnancy, and I managed to graduate high school before the birth of my son in 2002. I had 2 children, a son and a daughter, before that marriage ended in terrible violence. I escaped with brain injuries and physical disabilities that still challenge my life to this day. I had my 3rd child in 2009. And 3 years later in 2012, just a couple weeks before her 3rd birthday, she died suddenly in my arms from asthma and lung complications. Being separated from my Blackfeet and Salish cultures, I was not prepared with knowing how to care for her spirit at that time. I didn't know the traditions of my people. I took her body to the feet of Yum Chenmo, which was the center statue at the Garden of 1,000 Buddhas in Arley, Montana. And Yum Chenmo is the mother of all sentient beings. And the Buddhist community there helped me to take care of her spirit because they knew how, and that was very remarkable to me. And they held a beautiful ancient ceremony for her spirit to be able to travel safely to the spirit world. And afterwards, I took her body to lay within Mother Earth, which reconnected me to our great mother Earth. Later into my adulthood, I began seeking spirit and seeking creator and wanting to heal all my wounds, all the grief and the loss that I had suffered in my life. And I began to reconnect with my Native communities. by returning to ceremony and going to sweat lodge for the first time. I heard stories there of my weaselhead relatives, and they were filled with humor and honor. And they were much different than the stories that I had grown up hearing. Around 2014, I attended a documentary film on John Trudell. And when the film was finished, they asked all the participants to raise their hand if it was their first time attending. And my hand popped up, and I was the only person who had raised my hand. And so they kind of picked on me. And they asked me to introduce myself. And at the time, I was very awkward introducing myself, especially around other Native individuals. And so I said, my name is Julie Geldrich, but I was born as Selena Weaselhead, and I kind of trailed off. And an elder in the back who seemed to be quite well respected stood forward and spoke up. And he said, "Oh, this one comes from chiefs. We must listen to her." And I was very taken back, because I had never heard that. I had heard stories that there were weaselhead chiefs, but I didn't realize that at that time there was actually the chief of the blood tribe, the Kenai tribe in southern Canada, was Chief Charles Weaselhead. And I started talking with this elder later, and he shared more stories with me about my relatives. And he shared his experience at residential school or boarding school. And he asked me what boarding school I had gone to. And I told him that I had not been to boarding school, that I was adopted into a white Mormon family, and shared a few of my experiences with him. And he got really quiet, and he started shaking his head. And he said, "Boy, your whole life was a boarding school." And I started to view my life very differently that day. And it was last year that I finally gathered the courage, and I walked away from my white adoptive family. And I left behind that life of oppression and cruelty and assimilation and colonization. And my first act of decolonization was taking my weaselhead name back. And I chose the name Natayo. It means lynx and Blackfoot. And I started to learn the Blackfoot language. And I started to learn my family history. I received a lot of the documents of my family history, and it was all jumbled up and mixed up. And I spread all these papers on my floor and began to piece them together and put them in order. And for the first time, I was able to speak the names of my ancestors and know how we were connected. And this last summer, I was able to attend my first Sundance, what my Blackfeet people call Okan. And their dancing were beautiful, some of our beautiful sacred societies, the Brave Dogs, which is our warrior society, and the Horn Society, which is who I was invited, who invited me. And I was able to dance for my people in ceremony for the first time. Before I arrived there, I was really, really nervous to go, because I had not met anyone there. And so I was not sure what I was walking into. But when I arrived, I was so welcomed in such a loving way. And it was all so new to me, this loving way of life. And at nighttime, I remember the Brave Dog Society would meet in council in the center lodge where they held all the bundles. And all throughout the night, they would gather and they would talk about the things that they saw happening. And then they would sing. And sometimes you would wake up when they would sing because they were so loud, you could hear them throughout the circle camp. And when I would wake up, I would sit up and I would listen to them and I would just cry because it was just so beautiful every time. And I was surprised to meet a few of my canine relatives there. The elders who had met me and heard my story about how I had been separated from my family and that I was looking to reconnect with them, they made it a point to reconnect me with the relatives that were there at Okan. And so I was able to meet my uncle Raymond Many Bears and my auntie Greta and some of my cousins. My uncle Raymond Many Bears, he was one of the 4 oldest elders of the Horn Society. And he was actually the elder who brought our Sundance from Canada into Montana south of the border, returning it to our Amskapi Pikuni people. I was able to get my face painted, and my uncle Many Bears gave me my Blackfoot name. During the naming ceremony, I was really nervous because I saw during other people's naming ceremonies, I was watching all of their families stand behind them and support. And I was really nervous thinking that I would be up there alone. And as my uncle called me up, I gathered up all of my gifts that I had brought in for him. And I began to see my relatives come out from the crowd. And they stood behind me. And I had beautiful matriarchs standing right behind me as I received my name, Niteki Stipinyak, one spot woman. And it was such a loving community and such a beautiful people to watch all the children running around. Some of the youngest children there, their first language was our Blackfoot language. To hear our elders speaking the language in conversation and laughing and teasing each other. It was my first time being home. And reconnecting with my family and my community and my culture has been a difficult road as well. Often it's been a very lonely road. My mother, Violet, still struggles with alcoholism. I have siblings who struggle with alcoholism and addiction. I grew close with one of my brothers this past couple years. And he ended up disappearing last year after he went to jail. And I haven't seen him since because he's too ashamed to see me or to speak with me. And most of my aunties and my uncles have already passed on. And the more and more of my relatives seem to be dying faster than I can meet them. I've also personally struggled on my own with my own mental illnesses. And I still find it difficult through all my conditioning and the colonization to love myself completely and give myself compassion and to feel worthy of a loving family and connection. And it's hard building these connections, and it's hard building these bonds with our family members. And it's hard knowing where to begin. These bonds should have been created in childhood. And our families throughout our nations are being destroyed by these systems. These foster care systems, adoption programs are a direct continuation of the residential school systems that were in place before, that committed these cultural genocides and these genocides on our people. We are separated from our communities. There are elders in my community who should have watched me grow up, who should know my strengths, my weaknesses, who should be cheering me on, teaching me the languages. I should be able to hear our stories and learn our dances and our songs. My heart still aches when I see jingle dancers. And now it's changed. It's changed a small amount because when I cry, it's out of a deep gratitude, because now I can understand that they were always dancing for me. So much has been stolen because of colonization. And we're coming back now. We're coming back for everything that was taken from our ancestors and from us. And that's where we need to build as we reunite our families and our communities. We need to build these connections and these support systems and opportunities and recovery systems and lift our stolen ones up. Because we are stolen warriors of our people, of our land, of our animal relatives, of our water, of our Mother Earth. We're our stolen warriors. So we need to create a clear path to be brought back to the circle in ceremony. And returning in ceremony is the best way. I remember when I went to Okan and I met one of my aunties, she said, it's good that you returned this way, that you returned in ceremony. And we can do this through community circles where families can reunite in safe ways, addressing issues of addiction and mental health, alcoholism, and sexual abuse, where we can learn the stories of our people and hear our language being spoken by our elders, and where our elders can teach us the language, where we can learn to sing and dance and drum with our family members, where we can gather medicine together, where we can play games together, laugh together, make regalia together, and create these memories and bonds, heal these bonds that have been broken from colonization. So we can return to ceremony and give our stolen people their voices, their names, and their power back. And I'd like to thank you, Jim, for having me here today and giving me this, offering us all this space so that we can talk about these important issues. And thank you all for listening to my story today. Kamotani.
Natalia, you've kind of broken my heart with your story today. It's so desperately sad what we've done to one another. And I, from the depths of my heart, and I think everybody listening to this program, I just want to surround you with the biggest hug you've ever felt of just love and affirmation and apology and strength and support for that life in you that never surrendered, and that spirit in you that refused to submit. No matter what you went through, you kept on keeping on. And I just want to embrace you in that spirit and thank you. Your story is the microcosm of what indigenous people for centuries and around the world have suffered. And the fact that you all have endured and can stand today at this moment in this critical time and with such grace and with such elegance speak such noble truth is just an awesome gift. And so I just want to honor you, Natalia. I just want to thank you. And I just want to express all our love and appreciation for what your story represents to us all. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to end the session at this moment, and I would like, Phil, you to just give us a blessing as we close.
Oh, Tukashla Wakatara, creator of the universe, most beloved one, all powerful one, most kind one, most compassionate one, ever forgiving one, O ancient of days, O blessed beauty, O ancient path. We give thanksgiving today that you have opened our hearts and minds to learn more, understand more, and come closer together. We give thanksgiving, great thanksgiving, greater, all good things, and all with all our relatives, past, present, future, closer than our closest vein. We all together pray that and know without question in time, all we've prayed for, all we've envisioned will come to pass. Give thanksgiving to all the tribes and nations, the east from where comes the red sunrise, those the south from where comes new life, the west from where comes thunder, lightning, rain, the north from where comes north snow. All the relatives are human family, all life. Let's come together in Father Sky and Mother Earth. And thank you so much for letting us hear the depths of the heart of womankind today, and what our very beloved relatives, not just women of the human family, but what our beloved Mother Earth is going through. Hauli chante washteolo shankmano hemeyado chinupasapa hemeyolo hauli chante washte. Aho. Have a most beautiful day. Like my dad said, said, if we can't be happy today, what day are you waiting for? Beautiful, Jim. Thank you so much. Ray, was such a great pleasure. And of course, Toja and Natayo, what Jim said, I can just put in there 100%. Yeah, what he's saying, you're doing such, you make your old uncle very, very, very happy and thankful. I know the future is taken care of. I don't have to worry about it because there's yourself and so many of the seventh generation are rising as prophesied. So I just really, it's been an honor. Thank you so much. Humanity rising. We are rising.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Natayo. Thank you, Jim, for making this happen, for opening this portal.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you, Kurt.
Blessings.
See you.
And we'll see you all here again tomorrow.
Yes.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.